All right, coming at you with part 2 of how did I get started in Zen, my Zen Journey, part 2. So as I left off in part 1, I sort of rediscovered Thich Nhat Hanh and the Plum Village Tradition in January of 2022, around the time of Thai's death. And I began sitting with 2 sanghas, actually. I found one in Calgary, Wild Rose, and Waves and Water in Vancouver, and I would actually sit with both of them during this time. And got to know the practice a little bit and got to see how their sitting meditation differs from like Soto Zen, for instance, how their walking meditation differs from Kinhin and Soto Zen, etc., and some of the other practices that came along. And I began to feel, wow, this is kind of nice, because Soto Zen, I wasn't going to get very far as a monastic at this stage in my life, because I couldn't get to Japan, and that's the only place I could do them at this point right now. That may change in the future, but in order to become a fully trained monk and go on to become a Dharma teacher, etc., you have to do 2 90-day training periods, Ango, also known as rains retreats, in Japan. And then you have to do a third at a registered temple, which is a little bit looser. But you can't split it up. In the North American Soto Zen, you can. In the Japanese Soto Zen, you have to be there for 90 days at a time. You can't waver on that. You have to be there for the intensive period. And it's intensive. And so, I was faced with the prospect of like taking a 3-month leave of absence, which I couldn't afford. And twice, because you'd have to do 2 of them. And as time went on, it just became more and more apparent that this wasn't going to work out at this stage in my life. Maybe later down the road, but right now, where I was at, early 40s, and 41, 42, and in a job, and that's makes decent money, but I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination. I couldn't afford to just take 2-3 month periods off. I tried every which way to look at it. It wasn't going to happen. So it became more and more apparent that the Soto Zen piece was not sort of going to work out in that way as being a monastic. But the Plum Village tradition offers a different path, and there's a lay sort of ordination path through the Order of Interbeing, which was interesting to me. And so what I decided, I continued practicing with Rocky Mountain Zen and continued practice as the practice leader of Rocky Mountain Zen, working with Yokoyama Sensei, but also deepened my practice more and more in the Plum Village tradition. So I started participating in days of mindfulness, for instance, with the different sanghas. And then in May, so about 4 months after I started the Plum Village practice, and I was pretty diligent, being weekly there and learning the practice and reading a lot and watching a lot of the practices on video, really familiarizing myself with the tradition. An opportunity was there for me to receive the 5 mindfulness trainings, which is sort of it enters you into the extended community of the Order of Interbeing. And it's kind of like a baptism or a confirmation, I guess. It's Buddhism, and in most schools of Buddhism, lay people receive the 5 precepts as sort of a way to enter, official Buddhist life. And so I received the 5 mindfulness trainings in May of 2022 with a sangha down in California. And as time went on, I decided that I was actually going to stop my practice with Waves and Water actually quite a bit before I received the 5 precepts. I was continuing to practice with Wild Rose Sangha in Calgary. So I received the 5 mindfulness trainings, and as time went on, it became apparent that there was an opportunity to establish a Plum Village Sangha in Edmonton. And so I decided to pursue that, and there was one member of the Order of Interbeing who was present, and she was looking at starting a Sangha. And so I started helping to develop what became known as Going as a River. But I really continued sitting with the California group, the Palomitas de Paz, as well, because one of the things that became very apparent to me, because I'd been exposed to Waves and Water, I'd been exposed to Wild Rose Sangha, and the OI member that was in Edmonton that co-founded Going as a River was from sort of that part of the tradition, sort of I call it Mountain Lamp affiliation. There's a retreat center in northern Washington called Mountain Lamp. And sort of the Waves and Water Sangha and the Wild Rose Sangha and the OI person in Edmonton were all sort of affiliated with the style of practice that came out of Mountain Lamp, which I got into a little bit of a disagreement because, it was sort of being passed off as the pure Plum Village practice. But one of the things that's really interesting is that Mountain Lamp is a dual practice center. So yes, Plum Village is one of the practice traditions that come through in Mountain Lamp. But the other is the Zen tradition in Robert Aiken's tradition, which is not Plum Village. It's very traditional, sort of Japanese. And what became apparent as I continued to practice with the California Sangha, which was not part of this, they're very much affiliated because the Sangha, Palomitas de Paz, in Vista and Oceanside, California, is literally at the foot of Deer Park Monastery in the Plum Village tradition. It's literally at the foot of the monastery. And so all the people there, when there's a day of mindfulness, half of them are up at the monastery. So they have an intense amount of monastic practice at the monastery. And their practice style is very different from the communities that came out of the Mountain Lamp tradition. I wouldn't say it's better, I wouldn't say it's worse, but I would say that it appealed to me much more than the communities that were affiliated with Mountain Lamp. And I ran into some issues. There were some personality issues, unfortunately, which I hope, haven't been able to resolve all of them yet. I hope one day to do that. There's a video that I posted on the channel. There were some accusations being thrown around that I was a BDSM instructor when I decided to leave Going as a River to practice full-time with Palomitas de Paz. There was some bad feelings when I left. I don't really know where that came from. I don't really know why that became a thing, because I'm not a BDSM instructor, nor am I a practitioner, certainly not at this stage in my life in BDSM. But it kind of soured the well for me because the OI member who was in Edmonton was pissed off that I was leaving Going as a River. And she decided that she was going to write various teachers and get in contact with various teachers in the Plum Village tradition, one of which I had started to work with as part of aspirancy for the Order of Interbeing, to tell them that I'm a BDSM instructor, which I'm not. And I'm hoping that this will come to some sort of resolution soon, because I have no idea what this person is basing that off of. None. Zip, zero, nada, one. I have no idea. I had some familial connections, so my ex-wife was a BDSM instructor, so perhaps I was being tagged with her in that regard, but I am not, nor am I a practitioner of BDSM. And so I think there's some corrective that's going to need to come down the line eventually on this, to even the waters and begin anew, etc. And unfortunately, simultaneous to this period where things got a little rocky, I started having a breakdown in the home. And I think a lot of that actually was, unfortunately, my ex and I began to split apart in 2022, really. And it became very apparent in 2023 that we weren't going to work out. And so I was kind of couch surfing for a while, and actually literally this weekend is the end of about a 3-month period of me not really having a home. But the animosity and all the different pieces had really been rocking and rolling since August. And unfortunately, in the Plum Village Tradition, you have to recite the 5 mindfulness trainings every 2 months or 3 months. Otherwise, you have to receive transmission again. And just with everything going on, although I did my best to keep the 5 mindfulness trainings, I officially did not recite them with any community, and my practice really dropped off in the 6 months from August of 2023 until February 2024. So it's a solid 6 months where my practice dropped off, where I'm getting back into it now. There was a time I wasn't sure whether I was actually going to get back into it, whether my journey with Zen was done, but I came to realize in late January, early February that no, my practice in Zen is not done, and in fact, maybe it's time to go a little bit deeper with it. And so next month, in March 2024, there's an opportunity for me to renew the 5 mindfulness trainings. By May of 2022, I'll have been a practitioner in Plum Village for 2.5 years. And also, I received the 5 mindfulness trainings in May of 2022. And hopefully, once we can square away some of this animosity that built up with the local OI leader, Order of Interbeing person, and some of these teachers that got involved in a rather weird and bizarre way, because it was all kind of done behind my back. It wasn't actually done with me as part of the conversation. Which, I'll just say it, if I was a pastoral care instructor, I would have failed everybody involved, because that's pastoral care 101, is that you don't go behind people's backs and do that. You talk to the person you have an issue with first, raise your concerns, and then if there's no resolution, you go and carry on from there. That didn't happen in my case. I was thrown under the bus in about 4 different ways, unfortunately, which is not a very OI thing to do. And so now I'm left sort of coming back to things and having to prove, apparently, that I am not a BDSM instructor, which is bizarre. It's just so bizarre. Anyway, I'm having a conversation this week with a fellow who's been a mentor for me for over 2 years, and I'm hoping for about 2 years, I should say, and I'm hoping will be again. And there's an opportunity. I got asked by some people in a town west of Edmonton about starting a Sangha outside of Edmonton, about 45 minutes away from Edmonton, and so exploring that as a possibility as well. So things are rocking and rolling with part 2 of my Zen journey. It's not over, and we'll see what happens and whether there'll be some beginning anew with people and all that sort of stuff. So that's part 2